Welcome. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Amplify Classroom and we're going to leave some messages for students using what we know about computation layer and connecting components. And what do I mean by that? Messages for students. Well, sometimes it may be helpful to give some sentence stems or ways to get students started, or maybe even giving some feedback to students based on what they enter, what they input. And so let me show you quickly what I mean here. So let's hop over here to another example. So I just called this messages for students, and let's look at one that I created here. And so if I select this, notice we kind of have this planet over here. And then if you look at the input box, what's different here is I actually have some sentence starters for students. So if you're worried about students needing that additional help to get started, I put a picture of this planet here and just ask them, what do you notice? What do you wonder? And then they can kind of type in whatever they want. Like this is a planet. I wonder which one. And you can see that they have those kind of frames to get them started. And of course, you can do whatever you want to. Maybe you're building out part of a sentence, or you're asking them to finish it. Maybe you're introducing a context and getting them started. Whatever you want to do there, feel free. You'll be able to kind of set the stage for what you want to have happen. And then the other thing that we're going to do here is we're going to give a little feedback to students based on a value they input. So for example, here I asked the question about how many planets are there? Now, if it was back when I was school, it might be different from the answer is now. But notice if I put in the number like 10 and I hit submit, it gives me a down arrow. So maybe I have too many planets. And if I put the number 2, I get an up arrow. And then if I put the answer 8 here, I get a smiley face. Of course, I could have typed words. I always love doing images when I can, and rather than words, or do something connected to it. But we're just going to start with that. And so that is going to be our goal today. We're going to be able to provide some sentence stems and some messaging in there, and then also provide some students some feedback. So let's get to it. Let's hop over here into Amplify Classroom real quickly. Back on my home page here, my discovery page at Amplify Classroom, and I'm going to go over to my stuff. I'm going to hit custom activities. I'm going to create a new activity here, and I'm going to call it messages. You can call it messages for students or whatever you want to call it. Totally up to you here. And then we're going to create new activity and click our button down there. So, all right, here we go. Let's do it. Let's create some newness and some funness here for students. And so the first thing, if you notice on the screen, I had an image. You can pull whatever image or whatever you want to. But anytime you want to put some type of media, some type of video, you use a media component. So I'm going to drag that on here. And then I had a note, which gave some directions. So that note component there. And then I had a free response where students entered their answers. And that's where kind of those sentence stems were. So that's what I kind of got going on. And so I need to choose a file to upload. So I can drag in an image, or I can click it, come over here from my desktop and use this image. So I've got an image in there. Just a little quick tip on how to add media in there. If you haven't done that yet, there's a way you can do it. And now I'm going to set the stage here. So I'm going to write, what do you notice? What do you wonder? So that's just my directions in the note that I added in there. And here's what's new. Here's what we added. Here's what's different. Here's what we've got going on. Of course, I can toggle whether I want students to see other students' answers or not. But if I come into computation layer over here and I select it, and I'm inside here, what I can actually add is something called initial text. And you'll even see it over here on our documentation, initial text. So if you want to learn more about it, you can click on that documentation. But I'm going to go ahead and type initial text. And then I'm going to put kind of quotations there, parentheses, to keep that in. And then I'm going to type, I notice, ... And then I can hit return a bunch of times, but there is a little faster way to do it using some of the language here. I can use that slash. For me, it's right above return up there, kind of that backward slash there, and put in. That just means return. I'm going to do it a couple times to create some space there. Make sure you have it in the correct direction. Otherwise, it's going to appear funny when you put it in there. And then I'm going to type, I wonder. So what that's going to do is I notice, return a couple times, I wonder. I'm going to put ... close it. And now I've created some initial text, a sentence frame, a sentence stem for students to go in. Great way to provide some accommodation, supports, ways to get students started inside there. And I'm going to hit done. And then when I hit that preview button, notice I notice and wonder. There it is. It appears. That magically appears in that sentence. And of course, you can do whatever you want to. I just wanted to provide you a little example what that looks like for students with that initial text. It's a great way to provide messaging and get students started. Let's try one more. All right, let's see if we can't provide some feedback here. And so on the next one, what I actually had a couple components again. I had a note here, and then I had a numeric value. So they're going to enter a math response. So I need those two components, and that's all I had. And I'm going to try to have a question, students enter an answer, and then get feedback based on the response. And of course, you can add another note if you want to separate them out, but I'm going to keep it all in one for right now as we go. So here's what I'm going to need to do. My question was, how many planets are there? Okay, and I'm just going to leave that alone because we're going to come back and add something to that here in just a minute. But remember, if I'm getting value from somewhere, if I'm pulling a component from somewhere, I need to name it. And so I can name it whatever I want. I'm just going to call it input 2 since I'm screen 2. You can name it whatever you want to, totally up to you. And then now what I'm going to do is go into the computation layer up here of my note. So I'm going to pull that response from input 2. I'm going to drag it up into the note so that I can provide information for students based on what they enter. And so I can call this whatever I want to. I'm going to just call it feedback. So I'm going to provide students feedback. And of course, when I do this, just a caution, like I don't like telling students they're wrong. I like giving them some direction and some guidance here. And so I'm going to call it feedback, and I'm going to use some conditional statements because depending on what they enter, my answer is going to change. And so I'm going to say something like when, notice when I start typing when it appears, when input 2, that's what I called my component there, dot numeric value. So when the numeric value is less than 8, and then I like using emojis and symbols. I'm going to put quotations. You could put up, down, whatever you want to. I'm just going to use an emoji here. I'm going to use the up emoji to kind of give the direction that they need more value for it to be bigger. So great. We've got it covered when it's less than 8. Let's cover when it's greater than 8. So I'm going to type when input 2. So input 2 dot numeric value is greater than 8. We need a smaller value. We need it to go down. So again, I could type the word down, but why type it when you can show it with a little emoji here going down? And if you're wondering how I'm getting the emojis, you can just right click and those will bring them up for you. And then we need a correct answer, right? When input 2 dot numeric value equals 8. You can do whatever you want to. I put the smiley face there. Again, using an emoji here. Let's get a smiley face here. There we go. And then lastly, I've got to close this off. I've got to close this conditional statement out. So I'm going to type, otherwise, just leave this blank. Student hasn't done anything. Let's just leave it blank. So I'm going to leave this here for just a second. Let's check it out. Let's see if it worked. Let's test out our theory here. And so how many planets are there? Now, one thing I haven't done is I need to make sure that feedback appears. So just like if you watched the previous video, I can come in here and insert a value from my computation layer, which I called feedback. So I'm going to have the feedback appear right underneath how many planets there are. And so let's hit preview. Notice nothing appears there. Ask the question, how many planets are there? And now when I input a number that's smaller than 8. Notice I get the up arrow. I love it. If I enter a number bigger than 8, I get a down arrow. And then if I hit the number 8, I get the smiley face. Now, there's one thing that bothers me, and this is just me on this. I don't like the fact that as I'm typing, you notice I went 1, 0. It started showing me there. I was going back and forth. Let's make this better. Let's make this a little bit stronger. I'm going to hop back in to my computation layer script. And after I have when input 2 dot numeric value is less than 8, I'm going to add one more thing to our conditional statement. I'm going to type and input 2 dot, and I'm going to come down here to submit it. So notice they have to put the value and push the submit button before they get feedback. And I am going to take a shortcut and copy this, and I'm going to put it with each conditional statement. So When it's greater than 8 and they hit submit, when it's less than 8 and they hit submit, and now when they have it exactly as 8 and hit submit, it's going to work for the student. So I'm going to hit done. Let's check it out. Let's hit preview and let's go for it. So number less than 8, 6, notice nothing appears yet until I hit that submit button. Now let's do a number greater than 8. Notice I get it now, and then finally enter the value 8. And notice I got my feedback there. So hopefully in this one, you got to see a couple more things, great ways to provide messaging for students. The first one there, we put in just some sentence starters to get students going. And then on the second one there, we provided some feedback based on some numbers they put in there. Like I said, I would really encourage you, if you can show it rather than type it out, do it, and really provide guidance for students that is meaningful as they go in and work.